Hello, thanks for clicking on this video. So today I'm going to be talking about an awesome album, Quiet Riot, the Randy Rhoads years. This came out in 1993. I'm not going to talk about a lot of stuff that most of you already know, but I will talk about today how I discovered this tape. I bought it on tape cassette. It's back in 1993. During that time I wasn't buying any really guitar magazines or any music magazines, and I just happened to be in the music store and looking at the tapes, and then I saw this and I was like, oh hey, I said, Quiet Riot, the Randy Rhoads years, man, that looks awesome. So I figured I'd get it. It was like a month after probably I did see an ad for it in like Guitar Magazine or something. But I did just see this on the shelf and I bought it. And it was one of those, really cool impulsive purchases, and one of the purchases I did not regret whatsoever, because it's an awesome tape. So this tape consists of, for those of you who don't know, the first two Quiet Riot albums, not fully, and then the original versions on most of the songs, but it was remixed, of course, remixed and redone. But the first two albums, Quiet Riot, and then the second album, and Quiet Riot 2 in 1978. So the songs on here, I think, were the best ones off of those albums. I listened to the other albums and selected songs and other stuff, and really wasn't wild about it. So let's backpedal here for a little bit. Let's rewind a little bit to 87 when Ozzy came out with the Randy Rhoads tribute album. We were, of course, still kind of new to the scene, only into a year. And then we had heard about Randy. We read through guitar magazines that Randy Rhoads was in Quiet Riot. But I personally did not know that he recorded any albums with them. I'm sure probably a lot of other people that, you've heard be somebody around that would tell us, oh yeah, they got, they did do 2 albums. And then, of course, I read later that they were released in Japan only like several years later, during the 90s somewhere. But it was like, geez, this is a really cool, interesting thing that they did. It was a really cool thing to discover, discovering more newer stuff to fans, because you got to think most of the fans anyway just knew of Blizzard of Oz, Diary of a Madman, and then of course the live tribute album, and that's all there was. But it was cool to discover that there was 2 more albums. They could have just re-released the 2 albums, but who knows? There's probably some kind of stipulations with that and whatever that they couldn't or whatever. But anyways, I'm glad that they did this. I like this album cover. I like the fact that they took the best of those 2 albums and then put them onto a single album. And of course, even Kevin DeBro stated that the first 2 albums were garbage, or there was a lot of stuff on it that was garbage. I'm not sure of the exact quote, but he said they were garbage. I'm like, not sure what the heck he's talking about. The songs that I heard and I know off of this tape were awesome. Trouble, Killer Girls, The Afterglow of Your Love, Looking in Your Window, It's Not So Funny. There's some really cool songs on here. Now, if you have the tape or CD, I'm sure you probably like it. Hopefully you do. And if you don't have it and you're a Randy Rhoads fan, an Ozzy fan, I definitely suggest you get this. It's going to be easier to find this than it is those other 2 LPs that were Japanese release only. I mean, you can probably find them on eBay. They're probably really expensive. I'll give a screenshot of that if I could find one of those, and I'll show you how much they're going for. And see, pretty steep, so it'd just be easier to buy the CD of this. It'd be easier and cheaper. Easier to locate and cheaper to buy. I don't know if they have this on vinyl. That's a good question. I'll have to look that up. But anyway, the song starts off with Trouble. I just thought it was kind of neat. I got a letter in the mail that says, I'm gonna go to jail. And his guitaring on it, the soloing, of course, the rhythm part's easy. Was simplistic, but the guitar soloing on it, it's late 70s. It's just what you would expect. All those 80s metal bands that were out in the 70s, you listen to their 75 to 79 stuff. It's a hard rock 70s flavor thing. This is exactly what Quiet Riot was like. It's with Randy Rhoads. It's not as heavy as the Ozzy stuff. It's not as heavy as the 80s Quiet Riot stuff, but it's still awesome and worth checking out. Trouble is an awesome song, and then the next song is Laughing Gas. Laughing Gas is a live version, and Randy goes into this like really long solo, and then he's playing little bits and pieces of stuff, little bits and pieces of songs that would later become the I Don't Know and some of the other stuff he did with Ozzy. Really cool, interesting there. So one of the funny stories is I had a friend over, it was back in '93 when it came out, and I said, oh, check this out, this is Quiet Riot. I told him it was Quiet Riot. Kind of get the hint right there. So he's listening to it, and he knew the first two Ozzy albums, of course, and was an Ozzy fan. He was a bass player himself. And he's listening to it, and he goes, this is a Randy Rhoads ripoff. And he's playing the solo, and I'm smiling, and then I'm laughing. I'm not laughing out loud, but I'm just like, holy cow. He's like really ripped. He was like really pissed off. He's like, this is a Randy Rhoads ripoff. This guy's a piece of shit. Who is this? Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot's a piece of shit. These guys are a bunch of idiots. And all that other stuff, because he thought it was a huge Randy Rhoads ripoff. It sounded like a huge Randy Rhoads ripoff, then like, Chris, it's a Randy Rhoads. Then I showed him the tape cover. And he's like, oh. And he didn't know either. He was oblivious to that. Like I said, like most of us were, there wasn't really anybody around to tell us, other than magazines, that Randy Rhoads wasn't Quiet Riot. And of course, like I said, there's other albums just weren't available. Most of the tracks were like redone, but the original track of Trouble was kept untouched and everything. That is not true, or unedited or unmixed. It is not the same version. So the version that you hear on the 1978 Quiet Riot album is different. So Killer Girls and Force Habit are my two other favorite songs off here. I like all the songs. I like pretty much all of them. And the Killer Girls is that kind of burlesque. I don't know how you describe it. It has the 70s kind of I don't want to say funk feel. It's hard to describe. It's just regular rock. It seems kind of popish. Killer Girls, for all of you boys to see. They're easy action. Get what you want for free. I thought it was cool. You just have to be into like Randy Rhoads to like really appreciate these songs and knowing that, hey, this is other recordings of Randy Rhoads right here. So Killer Girls, a little bit burlesque and, you know, soft rock or what the heck ever you want to call it. But a really cool song. Yeah, it starts out with this drum beat, dun, 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 dun. And then it starts out with that beat, just like he's beating on tom drums, and just dun, 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 dun. And then Randy comes in with that dun, 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 dun. He comes in with that dun, 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 that riff. I don't want to mimic it, it's gonna sound stupid. I should actually learn how to play that, because it seems like a really simple riff to play. But anyways, he comes in with that slow kind of groove riff, if you will, and it's just a really cool song. You guys are expecting metal. Just don't buy this album expecting the heaviest thing you've ever heard in your life. That's for sure. So, anyways, all those little guitar pieces and parts. It's just very signature of Randy Rhoads. You can just kind of tell it's Randy Rhoads. So that's what makes it really cool and neat. So Quiet Riot was an interesting band. You got to think, they were in California. They were on Kelly Garney, Drew Foster, Kevin DeBro, and of course Randy Rhoads on guitar. And you got to think, it's a weird situation, because Rudy Sarzo did join Quiet Riot. And then, of course, he joined Ozzy while with Randy Rhoads with Ozzy. He joined Ozzy too. And then, of course, he went back to Quiet Riot. So I don't want to get into all the Whitesnake and Quiet Riot and Ozzy connection with, you know, Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo, but you get the idea. Those guys were in like a lot of bands, especially Rudy Sarzo and everything. And of course, he didn't play on any of those albums. He didn't even play on the Ozzy albums. He didn't play on the Quiet Riot albums, not Rhoads. But he didn't play on the first two Quiet Riot albums. He did play on Metal Health. So that's one of the other things. Thinking back, of course, we all know, wish that whole incident in '82 never happened. But I was thinking, you know, it would have been cool and neat if it didn't happen. And then you left Ozzy like you wanted to, and then Randy Rhoads was on Metal Health. That would have been cool and neat. That would have, I think it would have gave Metal Health a whole new dynamic. I mean, the guitar playing on Metal Health is good, and we're used to it. We like that riff and everything. But it would have been really weird to see if that was the case. If he said, "Hey, you're leaving Ozzy anyways. Come back and join us. We have a record deal now. We're gonna make this happen. We're gonna do this and that." So that would have been interesting to see. So one of the cool things that Quiet Riot did is that they put the song "Slick Black Cadillac" is on the Quiet Riot 2 album, and also they decided to redo it and re-record it. It's a different version of it, but pretty much the same. The chorus and everything is the same. There's a lot of similarities to it. It's pretty much the same song, but they decided to put that on Metal Health. So that's another cool neat one. That's one of those songs you think it's an 83 song, not knowing it was off of Quiet Riot 2, so it's actually a 78 song. But it's really cool. Once again, Randy was great. I first heard of Randy Rhoads through the Ozzy tribute album that came out in '87. I mean, I heard a couple of the other albums before that, but I really didn't really know about the whole situation and everything and all that other stuff. Not until until I actually bought that album. That album by Ozzy, the tribute album, was a good one. It had all those pictures in there. It had their studio outtakes and all that other stuff. So I thought that was really cool and neat. And it wasn't until years later, 6 years later, in '93, when I got this, because everything before that and in between was just these little articles and these little specials here and there about Randy Rhoads. Look, Randy Rhoads is great. He was awesome. I loved Randy Rhoads playing. I could talk more about Randy Rhoads, but most of you who are Randy Rhoads fans already know a lot of facts about him. So there's not really much more to discuss. There's not really much more to discuss or talk about. This album is awesome. If you're a Quiet Riot fan, if you're an Ozzy fan, and especially, of course, of the Randy Rhoads stuff, you don't have this album, I definitely suggest you get it. Thanks for watching. Like this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.